last resolution on the agenda tonight, which is a resolution to approve an application for the establishment of a privately owned heliport at 893 DeWitt Road in Webster, New York, commensurate with General Business Law, Section 249, and the Webster Town Code, subsection 350-3. Now, I would say that one of the things I did earlier tonight is I handed out to the attendees a timeline of milestone events and dates within the helicopter law, if you want to call it, over the last 20 years. We had speakers when we repealed the law on February 22nd. We had speakers at the February 1st public hearing. I think I counted, if I remember, 24. 12 were for, 12 were against. Tonight we had 12 speakers on this in the opening of the public session. There were 6 for, 6 against. Consistency, gotta say that. But it really, at this point, comes down to the fact that the General Business Law 249 addresses a heliport, an airport, and really spells out the 3-part process of that approval. And it starts with the FAA, and then if they approve the site, and the pilot and all that stuff, then it goes to the New York State Department of Transportation Aviation Division. And then if it gets through those two, then it goes to the local municipality to do a derivation of an approval. Interestingly enough, since we repealed the law on February 22nd, it really wasn't officially repealed, I think, until April 3rd when you got back from the state that they recognized it, Dolly. I've had 2 people in Webster say, hey, I'm interested in putting a heliport on my property. And I said, well, that's great. Here's section 249. Go to the FAA, go to the New York State Department of Aviation. And when you get that stuff all together, come back to us. We'll see how that works. I don't think usually half-acre lots in Webster, the FAA and would approve it. What do I know? They're the experts. So, I'm going to hand the baton out because really the work that has been done on this at the board level is by Councilwoman Wright and Councilman Cato within this 3-pronged process. So I'm going to hand it to the 2 of you to either state or whatever before we move on.
Well, I think that several speakers made a very valid point this evening, and the board should be making a factual decision rather than an emotional one. One of the first things I did was to contact the town of Ontario, and I received the contact information for the attorney at the time that the town of Ontario went through this process. And that's where I learned about General Business Law 249, and the code of the town of Ontario was silent with respect to heliports, and therefore they chose to treat the heliport as an accessory use to the house. And from what I've gleaned from speaking to his attorney and doing some other research, that it is a pretty heavy lift to get the FAA and the New York State DOT aviation departments to authorize this heliport. They do the site visits and they look at it very carefully and diligently, and I rely more on their expertise than obviously mine, but I'm not the expert. They're the governing bodies to make those decisions. So, in my opinion, he has followed business law, General Business Law 249. And I'm in favor of approving the application.
Jennifer?
I agree with what John is saying. One of the reasons I mentioned earlier, and I realize we're talking about a private use versus a commercial helicopter flying over the town. My point for bringing that up is that helicopters can fly over the town. The FAA is the one that governs that. And there are uses where helicopters can fly that low. Not that this one would, but that it's legal to fly that low. And I think it's relevant from a safety and a noise perspective to mention that. Again, the approval process is very clear, and the FAA and DOT approval is there. There's a lot of discussion today, and there was a lot of discussion before about noise, and we addressed that last time with the noise from a helicopter is less than that of a lawnmower, and everybody mows their lawn. I also take into consideration, I understand the concerns about safety and the noise in general, but the neighbors closest to the property, the two neighbors closest to this property in question, have no concerns and don't have issues with the noise. The other thing was, like you said, Tom, the law has already been appealed, which was the law of not allowing taking off and landing in the town of Webster. And I think, lastly, I sort of agree with the statement, like, about safety and a helicopter can crash, a plane can crash, a car could crash. I mean, accidents happen all of the time. That wouldn't be a reason why you would not approve this application. So for those reasons, and I agree with John, I am supportive of the application.
Jenny?
Well, after consideration of everything, and getting both sides and everything, I just would like to know the point of order, if you could explain that. Point of order? Yeah, about that, why we already repealed the law, right? So, why do we have to do this?
This is, well, you don't have to do it. It's basically, it's a request by a citizen to grant grant a permit. I'm not sure either. I mean, I'll be glad to address that now. I can address it later, because I have some questions about the procedure myself.
So, but I'm just saying, like, if we already read the law, why can Mr.
Because the application is not to fly. The application is to have a heliport, which is different. In other words, the FAA and the state of New York can allow somebody to fly in and out, and that's been repealed. The ability to land a helicopter or airplane or whatever has been repealed, so that's no longer an issue as it was before. The issue now is the use and creation, well, I should say the creation and use of the heliport.
But like I said, it's just like if he having, his house, right? And he have a garage, he can park his car inside the garage or take it outside.
Well, but heliport is a separate structure. And you could say heliport is a separate structure. There's going to be different kinds of structures. If this is considered, other applications can be made. There's a principle of law that
Sure they can, but they're gonna have to go by general business law 2.9.
No, general business law
No?
has nothing to do with this.
Okay,
This is an application to the town board of the town of Webster for a permit. And it's not a special permit, so it's not under the special permit process. I'm going to say this because I think, I'm not going to be here forever, but the fact is, this is going to be an issue that's going to haunt this board.
well, if you're gonna make legal statements, I would ask that we allow John's attorney, Jared, to take the podium.
Well, you're not, well, John, you're not in court. I'm trying to give advice to the town board, which is my job. And
But I'm not an attorney, and I can't counter what you're saying because I'm not an attorney.
Okay, you don't want to hear my
I
advice?
sure do.
Okay, it's up to the supervisor what he wants to do. I'll be glad to discuss the whole thing openly, and if Jared wants to go back and forth, we go back and forth.
Keep going. I'll reserve judgment,
All
I
right.
guess, on whether Jared goes back.
Anyway, I want to clarify, because Ginny has questions, why are
Sure.
we doing this? The law was repealed, the procedure which legally stopped Mr. Bashani or anybody else from flying a flying machine, be it a helicopter, plane, whatever, was repealed, so therefore they can do that. As far as the FAA goes, that's different, that gives somebody the license to fly, it has nothing to do with the town of Webster. We don't control the air, we have control of the land in the town of Webster. We can control the zoning in the town of Webster. That's constitutional and statutory, so we're allowed to do that. The application here is for a permit. There's nothing in our code that says somebody can come in and say, permit me to do this or permit me to build this particular structure. There's nothing in our code. Heliport is not listed anywhere. It's not listed in any district. It's not listed anywhere. Thereby, not being listed, it's something that really you never see variance for, I would say. That's number one. Number two, Mr. Hale brought up the issue of an accessory use. Accessory use is listed in our definitions as a use customarily incidental and subordinate to the principal use and located on the same lot with such principal use. Is this a customarily incidental and subordinate use? I guess I'd put that to the town board. I don't see where it is. I mean, you can say anything is customary then, I guess, if you're saying a heliport, I don't know how a heliport would be customary to any use of anything. If that's the basis for granting this permit. But if that's the case, this is a customary use, then why would Mr. Kashani or anybody have to come before the town board and ask for it? I mean, I guess there's a procedure here that I don't understand. And I don't care what the town of Ontario or any other town does. I represent the town of Webster, I'm advising the town of Webster. I don't understand what the authority is for the town board to do this one. I've already given you all my opinion on this, by the way, in you various emails. And I've given my opinion to Mr. Hurt, he knows it too. I don't see where there's a legal right to do this. If Mr. Bashani or anybody else wants to go to, if they believe it's an accessory use, or they believe it's something they're entitled to, they can go to the zoning board of appeals and ask for a use variance. Tell me where the authority is for the town board, I guess, is what I want to know.
Are you asking me to comment or no?
Pardon me?
Okay.
I guess I'm.
Not yet, Jared, not yet, I'm still.
Well, you were just looking at me.
I
that's why
get to
was
be judge, this is great. Not really.
No.
Okay. I want to move on to Patty, but I want to stay with Charlie for a second because he is the town attorney and he's giving advice to the town board. And that's a very valuable resource for the town board. I want to be measured. So let me answer this, Charlie. We repealed the law, that's irrefutable, that was February 22nd. The state acknowledged it back at the end of March, early April, so here we are. If Mr. Kashani, who to the best of my knowledge to this point has honored my request, I don't know if I call it a mandate, don't land your helicopter there, don't take off there until we finish this process. In your opinion, if we did nothing, what is the recourse of the town and the police? I'll say, sorry, Chief, okay, if he lands his helicopter and takes off from that airport.
Police, nothing.
What is the town
I
doing?
guess ticket him for an unauthorized structure. I don't know, I guess I'm not going to put Josh on the spot here, but I mean, I think it would be up to the code enforcement officer to
Right.
enforce the code.
And I don't want to air dirty laundry, but our code enforcement, we have a great code enforcement officer, but we have a very circuitous, I don't even know what to call it, but we go through with these garbage properties, and all of a sudden we get into court and they don't show up, and then the judge just dismisses the case. That's what's happening right now. So I'm gonna ask again, what teeth does the town have if we do nothing and it's like, all right, the law's gone, so what teeth do we have?
The other teeth would be to bring a Supreme Court action.
Who's bringing that action?
Jesus.
So the appetite of that suit would have to be brought by who? The
It
town
would be
board?
brought by the town board. The town board would direct me or some other attorney to proceed.
Well, I would think we would all agree that we are on completely opposite ends of the spectrum from the town looking to put a nice ribbon around a process and give him the final authority to do this through structure or whatever. I don't think the town board in this configuration is looking to bring a Supreme Court action if he does land it, whatever.
No.
I can't speak for everybody, but whatever. Okay. So Patty, what do you got on this? So, if you don't mind me asking.
To Jimmy's point, one of the things that was discussed when the vote was taken to repeal the law was that after the applicant went through the proper permit processes and reviews, that the approval still landed back at the town board level, even though that law had been repealed. So it's before us tonight. I've heard a lot of people discuss both sides, and I can appreciate their views. One of the questions, and I'm just going to put this out there, is that, from what I'm reading and from what I'm hearing from our attorney, it's not really within the purview of granting a permit, but since there is no limit on a flight path, can the town put that in some sort of permit so that we are confident that it's taking off and landing over his property? That being said, that's not my issue, okay? My issue is that in listening to people and listening to the discussions before, and I think we all know that I was a no vote on this. We talked about safety, we talked about noise, we talked about height, all of those issues. To me, I appreciate the fact that there are experts who have looked at the flight plan, who have looked at the applicant's qualifications, and those experts have said this passes muster with everything that we have the ability to control. What those experts cannot give an opinion on, to me, is extremely important, and that is the quality of life for the entire neighborhood. And in my mind, yes, maybe somewhat emotional, but I don't think that this applicant or this permit perhaps adds anything to the quality of life of the entire neighborhood. It adds to the quality of the life for one person. And that's been my stance all along. And it continues to be.
Okay. Well, I would say this. My whole thing has been, since this began, is, and I'm a broken record on this. I think the department heads have heard it from me many times, whatever. You do not want to build systems and laws based on a person. Because when you build it around a person, then it doesn't have any continuity into the future. You need to build systems for an organization. You need to build laws that have a pragmatic aspect that takes out of the equation your biases toward the person. In my professional career, I have had to advocate, because it was the right thing, in my opinion, pragmatically, for people that I did not like personally. I also had to go against, because pragmatically, to my mind, it was the right thing to do for people that I really liked. So, it has always been my opinion that this law went into effect 15 to 20 years ago because of the dislike of John Kashani, which some of that dislike from the people down there might be well earned. I've known John for a long time. Maybe some of it is well earned. But that's not how I roll on these things. So as I've gotten more education on it, what I would like to leave the town with, when I'm long gone and this town board is long gone, is a template for, as helicopters become more popular, which they may, okay, that what is the system that we follow in approving them. And it seems like, barring changes at the federal level or the state level, yes, these experts come in and say that land and all that is, we're okay with that being at the FAA level, a heliport. My guess is there are not too many pieces of property in Webster that would get that approval. And then whatever criteria the New York State Department of Transportation Aviation Division, the same criteria, would be tough to get. So just because potentially only one person has the ability to get that at this point, I never saw that as like, well, it still is, if they followed the process and all that. I just didn't see any problems with it, regardless of whether I love John or hate John. So I do feel like a judge. Isn't that what a judge is supposed to do, Charlie? Maybe I missed my call, you know?
There's still
I love
time.
Charlie. I think Charlie, human beings, we're all human. Charlie wrote the law. This is a great guy, but we're all human. He is not leaning toward this, and he is going to give advice, in my opinion, because he wrote the law. And the law was a great piece of legislation, and attorneys take so much pride in that. And you know how much pride you take is that when then it gets challenged at a court level and the judge upholds it, they should put a banner up on the wall that Charlie wrote a great law. But just because that law held up at a court level doesn't mean it is the right thing. We've all learned that. Laws and rules don't always mean that they are the right thing. They were the creations of man. Man is a frail object who is got faults. Now I feel like I'm a preacher. We're going to get to the end of this. My concern is the lack of flight path. I guess I'm taking the opinion that whether it's there's some precedent of other town boards, this and that, the code's silent on it. We do stuff all the time at the town board level that the code is not overt on. And I don't know if there's an Article 78. If people want to challenge it, they can challenge it. I would like to see the town board, I think this is, we do fill permits, right? We do licensing agreements. How are we doing those for? Shouldn't they be at the zoning board or the planning board? No, our code says they should be here. Is that the right thing now to have them there? That's for another day. But I'll tell you this, something like this, I'd rather be at the town board, not at the zoning board. So if it's a permit, special use or what are we, accessory, R2, R3, if we have some latitude on that, my suggestion, and that's why I said to Jared, where is the flight pattern? Because common sense says he's got a unique piece of property, fly out over the bay, come back in over the bay. But there's no place in the rules that says he has to. Does the town board and whoever's making this resolution motion want to add that in? And just like anybody can contest it, I don't know if it's an Article 78, adding that in, maybe Mr. Kashani will contest that. I'm not going to adhere to a flight plan where I have to take off and go out west over the bay and then wherever he goes from there, and then come back in and come back over the bay. I don't know. So, John and Jen,
I
you
just-
guys have done the heavy lifting. You want to make a motion on this? For my money, you do the accessory, the special permit, whatever, and the flight credit.
Can I jump in for just a moment?
Sure.
I just want to make sure that I clarify my comments. It is not against one person. I'm not doing this to go against John Kashani. I think he knows that. And to me, and there are others that have come before us who said, I'm kind of interested in that too. To me, it's the same issue for every neighborhood that we look at this, and I certainly hope there are not a lot of properties that would fall into this category, but it's still a compromise for an entire neighborhood to benefit one person. I'm just looking at.
And Patty, I totally appreciate it. When I said it was a law, in my opinion, 20 years ago, it was against one person. I never said that what's happening on this vote right now. Deja vu, February 22nd, I put it out there in the handout. The board voted 3-2 to repeal the law. Karnak, everybody remember Johnny Carson? I can kind of see this might go a 3-2 route again. I was the third vote that got it over the top, just the way sequentially it went on February 22nd. I made a lot of comments how I had some consternation about it for some of the things I've said tonight. The specificity of the flight pattern and this and that I couldn't see in the FAA and all that. Now, I've made a suggestion, or I've made a comment here, to Jennifer or John is going to make this resolution, if this is going someplace tonight. If you make the resolution based on your research and what you've heard tonight, Jennifer and John, choose your words wisely on how you frame that resolution. Do you understand what I mean by that?
So you want us to include in this resolution the flight path? Ingress and egress.
Do we have some latitude? Our attorney says that it's silent, and if it's silent, either does that mean we can't do it and it should go to the zoning board, or does that mean, well, listen, we got some latitude, let's
According to another attorney in the room, the FAA regulates that aspect. Now,
It's silent to it in there.
okay, well, this is where I want another attorney's opinion based upon input.
I know what his opinion is.
Well, no.
Your
let me
opinion is
finish
that
now.
the FAA doesn't
Please
count.
let me finish. Please let me finish.
All right?
I would like his input based upon his client, what his regular path is. If his regular path is to come in from the bay and go out from the bay and has no problem with us including that language, then I have no problem. But I would like his input.
Okay. And that's, you know what? It's 10:15, I'll tell you what. As you're moving up to the podium, Jared, to give your input, another attorney's opinion on this, okay? Which, nothing against you guys, but I've dealt with attorneys for my whole career, and you guys could debate, like high school debate, pick this side today, pick this side tomorrow, and you'd sound equally passionate to both sides, all right? Now, I'm gonna just say this. We had a permit at the zoning board a month ago that basically had been issued by the zoning board several years ago for an in-home business. There was proof shown that they were breaking the rules of that in-home business, and the zoning board rescinded it, repealed it. So as you give your opinion, if we write this permit where we're saying this is what we expect the flight pattern in and out to be, and we adopt it, and we go on happily ever after, and then there is proof given that Mr. Kashani is coming in over all these houses and landing, that would be grounds to come back to this board and repeal that permit.
You're asking me for two different things.
Go with his question first.
So,
And John, ask him what you want to ask.
So if we include verbiage, just my understanding of the FAA, correct me if I'm wrong, okay? Who regulates airspace?
the FAA,
Do they regulate coming in and going out?
they supersede everybody. They are the only agency that can regulate air.
But
That
in
is it.
the FAA's information, they did not overtly state, okay, you need to come in from this direction and go out from that direction, correct?
They did not find it necessary. So, and keep in mind that right now, anyone can fly over any of these houses in
Correct,
the town of Webster, and there is absolutely positively nothing this town board could do,
right.
because they don't have the authority to do that. The FAA has the authority, if they found it necessary, to limit the entry and exit from John's property. Those experts did not find it necessary. New York State could have mentioned it. They did not find it necessary. So I understand, Supervisor, where your comments are, but the reality of it is, any helicopter could fly over these homes right now or tomorrow, and there's nothing the town board could do.
But we're not talking about flying, we're talking about landing and taking off.
But that's he's landing and taking off on his property. So it's the same thing.
Jared, can I ask you something?
Yes.
And like I said, we can have fun with this all night, but I don't want to keep everybody here all night. I also heard from one of the speakers that 1,000 feet, 500 feet, but that doesn't come into play from takeoff and landing, because we understand that the FAA or New York State, that when you take off, there's a point where you're 1 foot, and then you're 10 feet, and then you're...
Yes.
So they have overtly said that. So my point is that because that in the legal world is, well, look at that, you don't have to be 500 feet when you're taking off and landing, then he could basically come over all those neighborhoods and get down to basically trimming their house as he's coming into land and
No.
say, well, where is that not saying that, hey, I wasn't at 500 feet because I was coming into land?
Absolutely not. Because all they would have to do is take out their smartphone that everyone has, take a photo of it, send it to the FAA, and then all the work that John's done in getting his license is put on hold. Absolutely not. And it's so easy nowadays to prove that, to your point. If he's doing something that violates federal law with the FAA, that's all you have to do is report it. Oh, look, here's the video I took. Here's the picture I took. And it's over. So, I mean, there are so many safeguards in place, which is why I stood here many times over the last few months saying, you've got the FAA, you've got New York State, and now we're back here again. So, I mean, you've had 3 agencies or 3 administrative boards look at this, experts on aviation approve it, and now we're back here to really talk about the heliport. That's what we're here for. There is no, I can keep going on and on and on, I don't want to. I want to stop.
No,
I mean, because I take instruction to a lot of
I'll tell you what, a lot of latitude here tonight, a lot of whatever, but I also, you know,
I'm
nobody
trying
can
to-
ever accuse us, and that's why I handed out the milestones and whatever. We're not lazy in this, there's been a lot of town board discussion, 52 minutes before we voted on February 22nd. There's been 36 speakers at the public hearing on February 1st, and then tonight. A lot of, you know, back and forth, all this. And every day I learn something new. I mean, that was very interesting to hear that the blue helicopter is probably the RG&E or whoever helicopter, and people think that's John when John's helicopter is red. That's the kind of misinformation that will run things off the rail. A lot of stuff going on here. Thank you. I think I've got everything I need on an opinion. And Charlie, I appreciate everything you've done and do as the town board attorney, or the town attorney. So really, to tell you the truth, like I said, this is John and Jennifer's, they've kind of been spearheading the work on this. And I say that because some of the presentations that you've done, Jennifer, on this, from the podium or from your place, given all the research you did, and John, you dig in like you do dig in for things. I'll admit, I have not dug in like they have. So, they made the motion back on February 22nd, and the law got repealed. I'm saying that was easy because it was just repeal it. There was no dressing up of the wording of the motion and what we are going to put in for posterity on this. How would you, if you want to make a motion on this, how do you want to do it and how do you want to word it so the rest of the board can vote?
I'm not sure I understand like what you mean by how we want to word it. Are you talking about the wording it of governing a flight path or just making a motion that this application is consistent with the process of FAA, DOT, and Business Law 249? Because that's basically what's before us, correct?
I think the problem, sorry to interrupt, but I think the problem is there is no process here. We are not the FAA, we are not the state of New York. There is no process here. I don't understand exactly what they're seeking, to be honest. They want approval by the applicant. And he wants his approval, he wants the town to approve apparently the use of a heliport. Problem is, heliports are nowhere found in our code. They are nowhere permitted in our code. That's number one. Number two, if you're seeking a permit, there has to be a process for a permit to be granted. Planning board has a process which is written into our code. Town board has a process for many numerous uses, among which is not this. And I think zoning board has a permit process. But there's nothing here, so I'm not exactly sure what we're granting. If you grant it, that's number one concern, and that's a major concern because it just doesn't apply to John or the heliport. It could apply to anything, anybody coming here and say, we want approval for this. We're just going to come in, it's nowhere in the code, or we're going to ask for approval for this. It could be anything. I don't know what. I'm not going to strain my imagination to come up with other things, but that's my major concern because that will come to haunt the board down the road. And as many conditions as you put on it, and assuming nobody challenges, that's a big assumption because there may be people out there that will challenge their approval of this. You're still going to have other people that are going to piggyback and come in with and I'm not just talking flying machines, it could be numerous other things that we can't even think about right now. Go anywhere. Just keep that in mind. It's a big deal. This is a bigger deal than it appears. Frankly, we had a process that we developed, but we never put it in place for something. So, okay, that was a long time ago and that left. That's still on around.
And I would just say this, and look, when a code is silent to something, it doesn't mean it is prohibited,
Correct.
but it doesn't mean it's allowed. And that's why you guys make money as attorneys, because then a process starts of how that works, right? Now, we have things, I would say that the zoning board of appeals, for the most part, you're asking for a variance. Everything the zoning board of appeals does is a request to do something that is outside of our code. But our code says that it can be 3 foot high, and you're asking for it to be 5 foot high. I'd have to go back in the zoning board to say, do you guys deal with various requests on things that are silent, that you're asked to, as a zoning board of appeals, determine if it's prohibited because it's silent, or if it's allowed? I'm a data guy, we don't have time tonight to go look at that. At least my experience, and Josh, you've been overseeing the zoning board for a long time. Am I right in assuming the variances are, here's what our code says, overt, not silent, it says 3 feet, you want it to be 5 feet. Did you recall the zoning board of appeals doing stuff that is on stuff that is silent in the code? That now the zoning board is asked to say, is that mean it's prohibited or is it allowed? I'm not going to put you on the spot. I would rather have the town board, the governing entity of the town, who can always, any resolution we make, any local law we make, could be contended by lawsuit, Article 78, this and that. Every resolution we do 400 a year, right? So if we pass this, no matter how we do it, I'm not delusional to think that it couldn't have some group of people that come and contest it and whatever. But I go back to, if we don't do anything, I still don't hear, Benny's landing the helicopter there, and I know what our code enforcement is, and I know whatever, And so what? We go home and say, well, we've done everything we can do, and then the neighbors are like, what are you gonna, well, you can send it to code enforcement, but, you know, I'm gonna just be honest with you, the neighbors. The code enforcement right now doesn't have any bite. They'll issue some tickets on that because it's not an allowable use, and they'll go to court, and then I know how it works. If he doesn't show up to court, then it gets dismissed. How, that's fun. You think you're mad at us now? You'll be really mad at that time. So, what is it? And I appreciate, okay, that there's a lot of passion about this, but I'll tell you what. I guess why they pay me the big bucks on the supervisor, I'm gonna make a motion, all right? And you can do the sequence any way you want, okay? And I'm gonna explain why I'm making the motion as I make it. I'm going to make a motion to approve an application for the establishment of a privately owned heliport at 893 DeWitt Road, Webster, New York, as an accessory building, or I'm sorry, an accessory unit, accessory use, permit. And I'm going to leave it at that. And I'm going to tell you why I'm going to leave it at that before you vote on it. Because the more and more I hear from the naysayers and the positives and this and that, and the sound, and they're over my house and this and that, you know what, Jared? You made a very good point here. This is 2024. If he is hovering over someone's house and pulls that crap, pull out your camera, take a picture, send it to the FAA, and I do believe he's done. And that's why I'm leaving it clean and not all of the stuff that, but I wanted to talk about it. A flight pattern and this and that. But that's my motion. Should I read it again for clarity as each board member votes on it? Or does everybody understand the motion I just made?
I don't understand this. You're establishing a permit rather than granting an application. I think you're.
Okay, well, you know what? Then strike it. And I'm going to put it right back to John and Jen. If you don't like my thing, then take control of it.
All right, I will move to approve an application for the establishment of a privately owned heliport at 893 DeWitt Road, Webster, New York, commensurate with General Business Law, Section 249, and Webster Town Code, subsection 353, which is silent with respect to heliports. That's my motion.
I'll second that, and I'm going to explain. I'm seconding it based on the research that I've done, the discussion here tonight. There was a process. There is a law for establishing a private heliport. There is an approval from the FAA. There is an approval from the DOT. That's the process. That's the three-step process. And I'm not an attorney, but in law, you have cases that are precedents, and the town of Ontario has the same
This is
law.
the process that they followed, correct?
So we're actually following a process that was done in a neighboring town. So that is why I'm seconding that motion.
Councilman Cahill,
Aye.
Councilwoman Wright,
Aye.
Councilwoman Cataldi,
No.
Councilwoman Wynn,
Aye.
Supervisor Cordero.
Aye.